intelligent network automation through intent-based networking. So I mentioned in my notes and in our studies, what are people going to focus more on going forward in the next couple of years than they thought they were at the beginning of this year. Automation was one of the clear ones, and that could be applied. That term can be applied to lots of different things, obviously, but it also can be applied to how you manage networks. So, sticking with you, Mansoor, if we don't mind, how is in your view and what you're observing, COVID-19 impacting technology investments, and to what extent, related to that, will businesses demand that they get better ROI from their data centers going forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you highlighted that COVID-19 really emphasized the importance of the network, and I think we all feel a sense of pride, but also a lot of responsibility here in delivering on networking technologies that allow people to essentially go on with their lives in this crisis. I think, compared to in this particular case, in this pandemic, I think this is the first time we really see this networking in action and really, saving us all, right? And I think that this importance of networking, allowing people to still connect with their families, be 100% productive and even more productive working from home. This is all due to networking, and it's quite remarkable. And in fact, now that we've proven this works, I think that the effects are going to be lasting, I think, to your point, Jerry. But it also, I think, to me, the other point it highlights is the importance of automation. And I think automation and intent-based networking are closely related. Intent-based networking is just, a powerful way to deliver on automation, where you essentially abstract what you're trying to accomplish from the specifics of the how. And Mark Andreessen, I think that was 9 years ago, predicted that software was going to eat the world, and certainly we're seeing that. But with this pandemic, and when you have crisis like that, organizations have the need to pivot very quickly, change plans very quickly, and you can't do that, unless you have the right software, the right software approach. And I think that essentially automation software specifically is what enables companies to have that ability to pivot. And so I think that it's ultimately there's this really importance of having best of breed software. And I think intent-based networking is one of those best of breed softwares that enable that. And I think when organizations are working with vendors, I think it's important for them to consider who are these vendors that are delivering those best of breed softwares today. These genuine software vendors that will deliver these types of solution. I think that can make a stark difference, and between essentially surviving or the next crisis, or not having the ability to do that.
Okay, great. John, just in terms of I'm not gonna delve into this intent-based networking Apstra versus Cisco thing, although I do welcome you two to both address that if you'd like. But I just want to throw a question to you. In some of the notes when we spoke previously, you had noted that automation's huge, obviously a big deal for Cisco as it is for lots of companies. But you focus on assurance as well. What do you mean by assurance, and why is it important?
Sure. And by the way, I think all my colleagues on the panel also believe both automation and assurance are really important. Automation is to to automate whatever you're trying to do it quickly based on the intent. But then in addition, after it's automated, you want to check to see, is the network, are the applications working the way they should? If they are, great, you can give the green light on the dashboard, so forth. If not, you want to identify, is there a problem? What is the problem? Where is the problem? And then how can we easily fix it? And that's really important, because that's how we can very, very quickly ensure that the network is solving the things. Note that historically, this was done by humans. Humans would detect if there is a problem. Humans would also try to diagnose it. Now we're using much more machine learning to help us quickly detect that that problem exists and using things such as machine reasoning to do root cause analysis and figure out, hey, this is specifically what is causing the problem. And this is how I would go about, this is the recommended solution for how to actually fix it. So this is a place where a large amount of AI comes into play. We use artificial intelligence both to optimize the automation, as well as to do this assurance in an automated way. So both automation and assurance, I think, are really important for successful businesses.
Just anybody can comment on this.
Yes,
Bob and Kevin certainly. But do you feel that the business environment, the architects and network managers are ready to hand the keys over to automation and AI, whether it be for automation or for assurance? I mean, is this are we building momentum in that understanding and that skill set and that mindset?
I think so. I think they're ready because NVIDIA is AI. I mean, we're doing AI, and what John was talking about there was closing the loop between telemetry and action. And we talk about something that we call, for the IT guys, time to innocence, because often there's something that's broken, and the first guy you blame is the networking guy. And often it's an application or a database or something else that's happening, or your WAN provider, whatever it might be. And so, but figuring out the time to innocence, what that is really important. And so if you can take the underlying telemetry, and we actually introduced some technology called What Just Happened, that says in our ASICs, in our switch ASICs, that will feed a ton of data, but very specific about the actual cause of any underlying packet drops or latency issues, et cetera. And then to close the loop with AI. And so there's platforms out there that we have, like the EGX, which is an edge platform that has the GPU that runs not only the 5G network codec stack, but it can also do that closed loop networking. It can do natural language processing that we were talking about. And I think the world is realizing that AI is not a threat to the technologist, but rather it's a tool. It's just yet another tool. And so I think it's a matter of education, but smart CIOs and smart IT guys are not afraid that they're going to lose their job. They just need to do some hard work to understand how to use these advanced new tools that are available to them.
Yeah. I might add, I mean, when I work with enterprise IT administrators, I think there's two new technologies that they're dealing with right now. One is the cloud. I mean, I think ultimately they're starting to understand that cloud is fundamentally a better way to develop and maintain software, and they're starting to see the value of that. And the cloud is really what's driving the automation with APIs. You know, we're moving from kind of a CLI world into this API world, and that's where a lot of the automation is coming from. And I would say the second thing they're dealing with was with AI. Now, my personal experience with dealing with enterprise IT guys, they don't trust anybody. They don't trust the new guy, and they don't trust the virtual AI assistant. In either case, they have the virtual AI assistant has to earn their trust, right? So there has to be mechanisms for feedback into the AI assistants for them to start to trust it. Now, I would say we're starting to see where they're starting to trust AI to actually help them solve problems automating. So I think we're in the early days of AI. I think cloud, we're a little bit farther along. I think the other major transition we're seeing, you know, I've seen over the years is going from CLI into dashboards. I think we're really moving to more of a conversational interface, you know, the Star Trek, you know, computer. You know, I think people are going to start getting data, you know, information out of their networks in a much more conversational manner going forward. So I think we're starting to see the death of the dashboard. You know, the swivel chair dashboard problem is going to start fading away.
Maybe if, I mean, we talked about automation, we talked about assurance. You know, when we talk about intent-based networking, I think for us, and I think when we talk about intent-based networking, it's important to understand that assurance is part of automation. It is, you know, completely as part of this, part of the automation. And this is what we call closed loop automation, right? You know, automating in an open loop fashion when you're just essentially automating a bunch of commands using a script can be extremely dangerous, right? So, you know, you could, that's the surest way to, you know, get so much of your network out of commission, right? Create a massive outage. Because you don't have that feedback loop that tells you whether what you're automating at a very fast rate is essentially delivering on your intent, right? And so this is why assurance is really part of automation. And when we talk about intent-based networking, it's this really powerful automation that's closed loop, that not just configures the network, but also is collecting all the telemetry and ensuring that through this closed loop validation, that your network is delivering on your intent. I'd say that's number one. The other point I'll make here, and I think this is a good debate to have, is sometimes when I hear folks, when they talk about assurance, they immediately bring up machine learning and artificial intelligence, and I think that there is a role for those technologies. But at the end, when you're operating a network, I think the most important thing is predictable performance, right? I mean, one could argue that the goal of engineering is predictable performance. If you have a plane and it works 9 out of 10 times, but 1 out of 10 times it crashes, it's not a great plane. No one's going to use it. I mean, essentially, unpredictable performance is horrible. And so, when we talk about assurance, I think that one approach that Apstra has taken is to say, or we've taken, is to say, look, you need to have deterministic performance, and there is a lot of knowledge that you already have in your infrastructure, and you need to use that knowledge to deliver this deterministic performance, to have this, so that your network itself is predictable. So, for example, if you're trying to self-heal, right? And the insight that you get is correct 9 out of 10 times, and you can't use that to self-heal. The insight you get, this anomaly that you're getting that's telling you that there is a problem, you need to have a very high confidence that indeed this is a problem, and only then can you go in and self-heal. And I think that while machine learning has promise, and AI has use cases, I think that in the context of self-healing, very quickly you're going to have that challenge. And so this is why a knowledge-based approach is a far better one in actually delivering on this self-driving, self-healing experience.
I mean, the one thing I might add there, right? I mean, 20 years ago when I did aerospace, I think the other big change is really the software, or fundamental software architectures. I mean, 20 years ago, we were writing embedded software architectures on top of 1U Linux boxes, right? The other fundamental thing, this is back to the cloud, as we move from these embedded software architectures to these microservices distributed architectures in the cloud, that by itself brings a lot more reliability and speed, right? The speed at which I can fix a bug right now is on the matter of a week, as opposed to months back in my old days. So I think the other fundamental thing is the foundation is changing. We're moving from embedded software architecture to microservices cloud architectures, and that just gives you a better foundation on which to build now.
Yeah, and maybe one other thing I'll say here when it comes to automation, right? Generally networking, you have the architects and the operators, right? So, traditionally the architects are the ones that come up with the design, right? And then they toss the keys to the operators, and then the operators, essentially operate this network. And this is why we've seen over the last 30 years with this notion of brownfield and legacy networking. Essentially, as soon as you toss your keys to the operator is going to make these changes, which are either undocumented or documented in these obscure ways, and ultimately you're drifting from this original design that the architect has had in mind. And so another really big important tenet here of intent-based networking is that it's a unified tool that both architects and operators use, so that not only do you build and design your network the first time using this intent-based networking approach, but it's the same tool that you're using for every time you need to make a change in your network, whether you're adding a rack, taking away a rack, or making a change, adding a virtual construct. It needs to be recorded in the single source of truth. It needs to be self-documented. It needs to be audited. You need to have the ability to roll back, go back in time, having this time machine ability of, rolling back to where you were three days ago. And all of that can be done in software if you have this tool that unifies operators and architects. And certainly that has been our approach. And that's what we think is, a key part of the definition of intent-based networking. And I know I showed this book, but I'm quite excited about it. Jeff Doyle on our team, he's a renowned author. I think all of us have read his book, and you can download it from our website. Your audience can download it from our website, and it actually summarizes these important concepts of intent-based networking. So I thought I'd show it to you guys.
The other thing I might add is kind of on this automation thing is, right now I'm working in the industry with a couple different groups around the data thing, because the other big thing is we start to try to automate the end-to-end user experience, right? Because we're not really managing boxes anymore, right? We're trying to solve some sort of end-to-end application or user experience problem. Is really we need to start gathering data from different distributed sources. And this leads to data lakes and warehouses, and there's got to be a better way to get the data you need to answer questions, right? And I think what we're starting to see is people are starting to virtualize, leave the data in place, figure out what question you're trying to answer, and then pull the data you need. Because right now we're seeing the industry, right, try to take all the data, stick it in some big data lake, and it really never works as well as they think it does. They spend a year getting the data, and then they don't get nearly as much insight as they think they're going to get out of it.